In the year 2750, the universe was a maze of shattered planets, abandoned moons, and forgotten stars, each a relic of a civilization that had long since crumbled under the weight of its own ambition. Among the debris of the galaxy's former glory, there was one name that stirred whispers among the remnants of humanity: Alicia Drake. Her reputation had become the stuff of legend. The woman who had burned entire star systems, not for conquest, nor for revenge, but for something far more elusive, a single hidden truth. But that truth, buried beneath centuries of lies, was locked behind the ancient machinery of the astral vault, an artifact said to hold the key to humanity's true origin. Alicia's quest had started as a whisper in the dark, a forgotten codex discovered by accident, a map to a place so ancient that no one alive remembered its existence. But to Alicia, it wasn't just a map, it was a promise to reveal the truth about the gods who had once ruled the stars. For years, she had traveled from system to system, building a crew of outcasts, exiles, and criminals who had nothing to lose but their lives. They were her family now, united under the banner of a single purpose: to reach the astral vault and unlock the answers that would forever change the course of history. They had just entered the Arcturian expanse when the first warning shot came. It was barely a whisper against the void, a pinpoint of energy that zipped past their ship, the Erebus, leaving behind only a ripple of distortion. The crew had scrambled to their stations, tension rising as the comms buzzed with static. Alicia, a voice crackled over the line, and she knew it was Zane, her second in command, a former pirate who had once been the scourge of the Outer Rim. His voice had always been calm, but tonight it carried an edge she hadn't heard before. "We're being followed. Multiple ships. They don't belong to any faction we know." Alicia's hand clenched the armrest of her command chair. She had expected something like this. After all, the Astral Vault wasn't just a myth. It was a secret that many factions would kill to possess. But she had underestimated just how far the hunt for the truth would reach. "Divert to the hyperlane," she ordered, her voice steely. "Let's see if they're brave enough to follow us into the storm." The Arcturian expanse was a treacherous stretch of space, a swirling chaos of gravitational anomalies and rogue black holes. A perfect place to lose pursuers. But as she studied the data streaming across her screen, a deep unease settled over her. There was something different about these ships. "Zane, what do you see?" she asked, her voice sharp. Zane's reply came with a growl. "They're not making a run for the expanse's edge. They're heading straight for the heart of it. The Erebus won't survive if we don't go full throttle." Alicia felt her heart rate spike. There was only one reason someone would take such a risk. They knew something she didn't. "Increase speed," she commanded. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. We need to buy ourselves some time." But even as she spoke, a feeling of dread gnawed at her. They weren't just after the vault anymore. They were after her. The sudden jolt of the ship breaking through the hyperlane was like the snap of a whip. Alicia gripped the armrests, trying to steady herself as the stars outside twisted and warped into streaks of light. She had one shot to lose their tail. But then came the second shot. A blast of raw energy collided with the Erebus shields, sending a shockwave that rattled the whole ship. Sparks flew from the control panels, and alarms blared in the background. "We've got hull breaches," Zane called out. "Multiple sectors are taking damage. We won't survive another hit like that." "Get us out of here," Alicia snapped, the urgency of the moment settling like a vice around her chest. But as the ship's engines roared to life, something in her gut told her that they wouldn't be running forever. The pursuit wasn't just about capturing them. It was about something much worse. Someone knew what she was after. Alicia's thoughts turned cold. She'd never believed in fate. But there were some things you could never escape. And now, the shadows from her past had come to claim her. The Erebus shook violently as the next round of energy blasts pummeled its shields. Lights flickered. The hum of the engines began to sputter. The crew was working frantically, trying to repair critical systems. But there was no hiding the fact that they were in grave danger. Alicia's pulse quickened, but she stayed calm. Calmness was her weapon, her only advantage in a galaxy that thrived on chaos. Zane's voice crackled over the intercom again. Shields are holding, but barely. We're not going to last long, Alicia. She stood, striding purposefully to the ship's central console. Her eyes darted over the holographic map of the expanse. She could see the streaks of hostile ships behind them, their forms fading and warping as they engaged in the dangerous gravimetric anomalies that surrounded the hyperlane. Increase speed, she ordered. We can't outrun them, but we might be able to shake them off. But just as she finished the command, the ship lurched again. This time, it wasn't a blast. It was the Erebus engine failing. A burning smell filled the air, and the lights went out. The room plunged into darkness. Shit, Zane cursed, his voice now tinged with panic. The engines are fried. We're dead in the water. Not yet, Alicia replied, her voice cold and calculating. Prepare for a manual launch. She turned to face her crew, who were now assembling in the darkened bridge. They had fought together for years, through battles, betrayals, and close calls. But this was different. This wasn't about survival, it was about the truth. And that was worth dying for. Everyone to the escape pods. We're not going down without a fight. But just as the words left her lips, the sound of pounding footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. The enemy had boarded. The air in the bridge thickened with tension as Alicia signaled her crew to remain silent, the dim red emergency lights casting long shadows over their faces. Every breath felt too loud, every heartbeat too pronounced. Suddenly, the door to the bridge hissed open. 3 figures stood in the doorway, silhouettes outlined by the light of the corridor behind them. They wore the insignia of the syndicate, mercenaries with ties to the highest bidders. Well, the leader of the group spoke, his voice deep and smooth. Look who's still breathing. I'd say you're looking a little worse for wear, Captain Drake. Alicia's jaw tightened. She didn't flinch. You want the ship? She asked, her voice steady. Take it. But you'll never find what you're looking for. It's already gone. The syndicate leader smiled, a slow, malicious curve of his lips. Oh, we're not after the ship, Captain. We're after you. There it was. The truth, hanging in the air like a storm cloud. Her reputation had preceded her, and now the game had changed. They didn't just want the Erebus. They wanted her. A chill ran down her spine. She'd suspected that there were eyes on her, but to have them this close, on her ship, in her face, made the truth undeniable. There was a mole, a spy, and they had already betrayed her. But there was no time for hesitation. She could see the weapons in their hands, the glint of deadly force. The crew wasn't going to be able to fight them off, not without her. Alicia stood tall, her gaze unwavering. I don't give up. I don't run. And I don't surrender. With a swift motion, she drew her sidearm and fired. The first syndicate soldier collapsed in a heap, his weapon clattering to the floor. The other 2 reacted instantly, diving behind cover as they returned fire. The bridge was suddenly filled with a deafening roar of blaster shots and ricocheting energy. Alicia, get to the pod. Zane shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. We can't win this fight. But she wasn't backing down. She had come too far, sacrificed too much. The truth was still out there, waiting. And she was not about to let these mercenaries take that from her. Alicia dove behind a console as another blast exploded against the wall. Her mind raced, calculating the trajectory of each shot, the positions of her enemies. Zane had already made his way to the rear of the ship, leading the rest of the crew to the escape pods. She couldn't afford to lose any more time. If she wasn't going to escape with the ship, she'd escape with the truth. The syndicate leader took another shot at her, but Alicia was quicker. She emerged from behind cover, fired again, and watched as the mercenary's body crumpled to the floor. Where are you going? She asked the remaining 2. You've already lost. One of them hesitated, and in that brief moment, Alicia was on him. A swift kick knocked the weapon from his hand, and she disarmed him with a quick twist of her wrist. The last mercenary was already retreating, firing as he went. But he was too slow. With one final well-placed shot, Alicia dropped him to the floor. The bridge fell silent. The danger had passed, but the price had already been paid. She was alive, and so was the truth. But as she stood amidst the wreckage, her heart heavy with the weight of her choices, Alicia knew one thing for certain. Whatever lay ahead, it would cost far more than she could ever imagine. The hum of the Erebus systems was gone, replaced by the eerie silence of dead engines. Alicia stood over the wreckage of the Syndicate mercenaries, the weight of her gun still heavy in her hand. Her breath was shallow, but her mind was racing. She had fought her way through the ship, but that wouldn't matter if the Syndicate had already outmaneuvered her. Zane's voice crackled over the comm, snapping her back to the present. Alicia, we've lost power in every quadrant. I can't get the engines back online. We're stuck here unless we can make it to the backup systems. She cursed under her breath. The Erebus had been her home for years, her ship, her sanctuary, and now it was falling apart piece by piece. But it wasn't just the ship that was at risk. It was the mission, the truth, and she wasn't going to let it slip through her fingers. I'm on my way, she said curtly, moving toward the main exit. The escape pods were already prepped. If worse came to worst, they could still flee to a nearby station. But there was no way she was abandoning the Erebus just yet, not without one last chance. As she entered the lower levels of the ship, the corridor lights flickered and dimmed. Sparks shot from one of the panels. She cursed again, picking up her pace. She didn't have time to waste. When she reached the engineering deck, Zane was waiting, his hands already covered in oil and grease as he attempted to bypass the damaged circuits. What's the status? Alicia asked, her voice tight with urgency. Zane wiped his forehead with the back of his hand, then looked up at her. The core's fried. I can get the backup reactors online, but it's going to take time. We've got maybe an hour, 2 at best, before we're dead in the water completely. Alicia clenched her fists. She had no intention of letting the Erebus drift into oblivion. Can we make it to the jump gate before then? Zane looked at her, his expression grim. That's a one-way trip. And with the Syndicate still out there, waiting, it's a suicide run. Alicia didn't hesitate. We don't have a choice. We'll make it work. He shot her a look, like he wanted to argue, but he knew better. There was no changing her mind when it was set. A quiet alarm sounded in the background, and Alicia glanced at the flickering holoscreen. They're coming, she muttered. Prepare for evasive maneuvers once the engines are back up. We're not going to let them take us down without a fight. Zane nodded and returned to his work, his fingers flying over the damaged panel. Alicia turned to leave, but then something caught her eye, a data terminal embedded in the wall, blinking with the faintest hint of life. A leftover connection. Without thinking, she strode over to it and hooked her wristband into the system. She wasn't sure why. She knew the primary systems were compromised, but the instinct to uncover something, anything, pushed her forward. The screen came to life, displaying a cascade of encrypted files, all buried beneath layers of codes and subroutines. Alicia frowned as she scanned through the messages, her mind working quickly. There was something about the way the files were structured, something familiar. Her breath caught. It wasn't just random data, it was a map. Not of the expanse, but of the astral vault. Her heart raced as she decrypted the first few lines. This wasn't just a blueprint, it was a live feed. Someone was monitoring the vault's location in real time. Alicia's fingers flew across the keys as she extracted the most crucial data. The vault wasn't just hidden in the depths of space. It was buried deep in the heart of an ancient nebula, one that was long considered to be a dead zone. Even if you had the coordinates, you'd never survive the journey. Except she had the map. And now she knew why the Syndicate was after her. They had been watching her from the beginning. They knew her every move, her every choice. It wasn't just the Erebus they wanted. It was the secret she was carrying with her, one that could shake the foundations of everything. Alicia, we've got company. Zane's voice broke through the haze of her thoughts. They're closing in fast. We need to go. Now. She turned away from the terminal, the map secure in her wristband. Her mind was already calculating the next move. There was no time to waste. We're taking the jump gate, Alicia said, her voice sharp. Get the backup systems running. I'll handle the rest. Zane shot her a skeptical glance. "You're insane." "Maybe. But I'm not letting anyone else control the truth. This is mine to finish." She turned and sprinted back to the command center, where the crew was assembling, ready for whatever came next. She could feel the ship trembling under her feet as the last of the engine power flickered back to life. The countdown to their escape had begun. The gates of the jump gate appeared in front of them, an impossible distance ahead. Alicia's breath caught in her throat. If they failed now, it would be the end of the line. The syndicate would wipe them out, and all their work, the sacrifices, the journey, would be for nothing. The Erebus lurched forward, the engines roaring to life as they propelled the ship toward the gate. Behind them, the syndicate ships were hot on their tail, pushing through the gravimetric storm with deadly precision. "We're almost there," Zane called out. "Another few seconds, and we'll make the jump." Alicia's pulse quickened as the final countdown began. 3, 2, 1. With a flash, the Erebus shot through the gate, disappearing into the dark void beyond. The stars outside warped into streaks of light as they entered the jump, leaving behind the danger and uncertainty of the expanse. But Alicia knew that escaping the syndicate wasn't the end of their troubles. They were heading into the heart of the unknown, into the nebula. And whatever lay on the other side, she was ready. The Erebus shuddered violently as the jump took them deeper into the uncharted expanse. Alicia's grip on the console tightened, her knuckles white with the effort to stay focused. The stars outside warped into a blur of light and dark as they tore through the fabric of space. The artificial gravity seemed to flicker, throwing the crew off balance momentarily before stabilizing. "We're out of storm," Zane said, his voice crackling over the intercom. "But the nebula's coming up fast. You sure about this, Alicia?" Alicia's gaze remained locked on the holographic map. The nebula loomed ahead like a thick wall of swirling purple and black clouds, pulsing with the energy of ancient cosmic forces. It was a place that most ships avoided, an unpredictable, deadly zone where sensors malfunctioned, and time itself felt as if it bent and stretched. But for her, this was the only way forward. "The map's right," she replied with a cold certainty. "We're not turning back." A deep hum reverberated through the Erebus as the engine struggled to maintain power in the nebula's unstable gravitic fields. The ship seemed to groan under the pressure, but Alicia wasn't afraid. There was too much at stake. The truth, what they'd been chasing all this time, was buried deep within the heart of this cosmic wasteland. And she would find it no matter the cost. "We're going to have to take it slow," Zane warned. "The nebula's too dense for the regular scanners to penetrate. It's going to get ugly in there." Alicia nodded, her eyes scanning the shifting nebula around them. The swirling gases outside flickered and pulsed in hues of violet, deep blue, and silver. The nebula seemed alive, as though it were watching them, waiting. But there was no turning back now. "Do what you need to do, Zane," she said. "I'll trust you to keep us together." "Not much of a choice, huh?" Zane quipped, but there was an edge of humor in his voice. "All right, I'm rerouting power. We'll need to adjust our trajectory as we go. Take it slow and steady. Hang on tight." The Erebus lurched as the ship adjusted course, slowly sinking deeper into the nebula's clouded heart. Alicia could feel the tension mounting as the crew worked quickly, scanning for any sign of a navigational beacon or hidden signal. But the deeper they went, the more disorienting the journey became. Every twist and turn of the ship made it harder to tell which way was up. Suddenly, a flashing light cut through the gloom, the glow of an ancient beacon buried deep within the nebula's core. "Alicia, I think we found it," Zane said, his voice thick with awe. "I'm getting a signal from below. There's something there. Something old." Alicia felt her pulse quicken. "The vault." "Take us in," she ordered. "We're close." The Erebus shifted again, this time with more force, as Zane powered the ship through the dense gas clouds. The nebula seemed to fight back, swirling around them, tightening its grip like a beast of the void trying to choke them out. The sensors kept glitching, and the ship's systems faltered under the pressure. Then, in a sudden burst of clarity, the Erebus emerged into a clearing. What greeted them was nothing short of breathtaking. Floating in the center of the nebula, as if suspended in time itself, was a massive structure. It was unlike anything Alicia had ever seen, a towering spire of black metal that seemed to be carved from the very fabric of space itself. Jagged edges pierced the surrounding clouds, and strange runes glowed faintly across its surface, casting an eerie light across the entire area. The astral vault. Alicia's breath caught in her chest. This was it. The truth they had sought for so long was within reach. "We're here," she whispered, her voice filled with reverence. "We've found it. How do we land?" Zane asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. "That thing looks like it's been here for millennia." "We won't need to land," Alicia said, already unstrapping herself from her chair. "This place was designed to be approached from space. We'll dock at the base." She motioned for the crew to gather their gear and prepare. They didn't know what lay inside the vault, but Alicia was ready to find out. She wasn't just here for the artifacts or the riches. She was here for the answer to the greatest mystery of humanity's existence, the truth about where they came from. The ship groaned again as Zane began the docking procedure, guiding the Erebus toward the massive structure. The gravity well of the vault seemed to tug at them, pulling them closer like a magnet. The closer they got, the more oppressive the energy became. A strange sense of unease settled over the crew, but Alicia pushed it away. She wouldn't let fear stop her now. As they neared the vault's surface, a massive hatch slowly opened, revealing a dark interior. It beckoned them in, its shadow seeming to consume the light. "Ready?" Zane asked, his voice low. Alicia took a deep breath and nodded. "Let's go." The crew suited up quickly, gathering their weapons and supplies. Alicia led the way, her footsteps echoing in the silent ship as they made their way toward the airlock. The moment the airlock doors opened, a cold, sterile silence filled the chamber. The vault was even more ancient than she had anticipated, its walls smooth and untouched by time, as though they had been waiting for centuries to reveal their secrets. A single, dim light flickered in the center of the chamber, casting long shadows across the floor. It illuminated a vast array of strange machinery, most of it unrecognizable to Alicia, as if it were designed for beings beyond human understanding. Then, there it was, a pedestal at the far end of the room, shrouded in a faint, otherworldly glow. Upon it sat a single artifact, its form impossible to comprehend, like a strange crystalline orb suspended in midair. "This is it," Alicia whispered, awe and fear twisting together in her chest. The truth was within her grasp. But as she stepped forward to claim it, a loud crack echoed through the chamber. The air shifted. Something was coming. "Prepare yourselves," Alicia said, her voice hardening. "We're not alone." Alicia's hand hovered just inches from the artifact. The orb pulsed with a soft, iridescent light, casting strange, shifting reflections across the walls of the vault. It was beautiful, impossibly beautiful, and yet there was something about it that made her skin crawl. The hum of the vault's internal systems filled the air, a deep, resonant sound that seemed to vibrate through her bones. For a moment, the crew stood frozen in place, their eyes glued to the mysterious object. It was as if they were all caught in its gravity, drawn in by the very essence of the unknown. Alicia's heart raced. This was it. This was the truth they had risked everything for, the key to humanity's forgotten origins, buried in the dark recesses of the universe. But just as her fingers brushed against the smooth surface of the orb, the ground beneath them rumbled. A deep, mechanical groan echoed through the chamber. The artifact flickered, its light dimming for a moment before surging to life with an intensity that made the entire room vibrate. And then, the door they had entered through slammed shut, cutting off their only exit. "What the hell?" Zane shouted, already pulling out his weapon and scanning the chamber for any sign of a threat. The crew immediately spread out, each member assuming a defensive stance, weapons at the ready. Alicia's mind raced, her hand still hovering near the orb. It hadn't been a simple artifact. It had triggered something. But what? And then she heard it. A whisper, soft at first, like a breath against her ear. She whipped around, But there was nothing there. No shadows, no figures. Just the empty space of the vault. The whisper came again, this time clearer, as if from the depths of the vault itself. "It is not yours." Alicia's blood ran cold. She knew that voice, she recognized it, even though she'd never heard it in person. It was the voice of someone who had been gone for centuries. "Who's there?" she demanded, her voice steady despite the surge of fear creeping into her chest. "Show yourself." The whisper faded, replaced by a low, ominous hum that resonated through the walls of the vault. The temperature in the chamber began to drop, and condensation formed on the surface of the nearby walls, swirling into intricate patterns. A shiver ran down Alicia's spine as the air grew thick, heavy with an unseen presence. She could feel it now, a force pressing against her, something ancient, something not quite human. "Something's wrong," Zane said, his voice tight with tension. He'd always been the skeptic, the one who doubted everything. But even he couldn't deny the palpable sense of dread in the air now. Alicia stepped away from the pedestal, her instincts screaming at her to back away. The orb was no longer just an artifact, it was a beacon, a signal. It had drawn them here, but now that they were in its presence, she felt it. An energy like a predator circling its prey. "Get ready," Alicia barked to her crew. "Something's coming." They didn't have to wait long. The walls of the vault shifted, and out of the shadows emerged a figure, tall, slender, with a presence that seemed to distort the very air around it. Its skin shimmered in the dim light, reflecting an iridescent sheen, like liquid metal. It moved silently, its long limbs gliding through the darkness, each step inhumanly graceful. Alicia's breath caught. This wasn't human. This wasn't anything she'd ever encountered before. It wasn't just a figure. It was an embodiment of something ancient, something far older than any civilization she had ever studied. The figure stepped into the light, its face now visible, or at least, what should have been its face. There were no eyes, no mouth, just an abstract, featureless expanse of shimmering skin. Alicia's voice was barely a whisper, but she knew her crew heard her. "It's one of them. One of the original creators." The figure's form flickered and shimmered as though it were made of light itself, then solidified into something more tangible. It raised its arms in a slow, deliberate motion. The air around it seemed to twist, the temperature plummeting even further. The crew's breath came in short, visible bursts, the chill sinking deep into their bones. The entity spoke, its voice not coming from its mouth, but from the very walls of the vault, echoing in Alicia's mind. "You should not have come." Alicia clenched her fists, trying to suppress the rush of panic building in her chest. "We came for the truth," she said, her voice firm. "We came for answers." The entity's form rippled, and a cold laugh reverberated through the room, chilling Alicia to her core. "The truth you seek is a lie. The answers you desire are lost, forgotten, buried deep in the past." Alicia's gaze never wavered. "Then show me. Show me what's hidden." For a moment, the entity remained silent, its form flickering as though it were processing her words. Then, without warning, the space around them began to shift. The walls of the vault groaned and cracked, and an enormous portal opened in the center of the chamber, revealing an endless expanse of light and darkness beyond. "You have awakened the key," the entity intoned, its voice low and ominous. "But the cost of truth is high. The price of knowledge is your soul." Before Alicia could react, the world around her spun, and the chamber seemed to collapse in on itself. The last thing she saw before everything went black was the artifact, its light now brighter than ever, flooding the entire vault with a brilliant, blinding glow. When Alicia regained consciousness, it was as though the world was spinning around her. Her vision blurred, the light too bright, the air too thick. She tried to move, but her limbs felt heavy, like they were trapped in some kind of void. Slowly, her surroundings began to come into focus. The vault, the dark, ancient walls, the shimmering figure that had confronted them. But now everything was different. The once sterile air felt alive with an unnatural energy, and the very walls seemed to pulse with a malevolent rhythm. She forced herself to sit up, her head spinning. The others were scattered around her, unconscious or dazed. Zane lay near the far wall, his breathing shallow but steady. The rest of the crew was still, but alive. Then, her eyes locked onto the pedestal. The orb. The artifact was still there, its glow now blinding, pulsating in time with the rhythm of the vault itself. Alicia tried to push herself up, but her body refused to cooperate. It was as if the very air in the vault was holding her down, wrapping her in an invisible cocoon of resistance. "Zane," she called, her voice hoarse. There was no answer. Her heart raced. She had to get up. They couldn't be left here, not now, not with everything at stake. The truth was in that orb. But what had happened? What had the entity meant when it said the price of truth was her soul? She swallowed hard, pushing herself onto her knees. Her body ached with a deep, cold pain that she couldn't explain. There was something wrong with her. Something inside her was changing. As she looked down at her hands, she gasped. Her skin was shifting, pulsing with a faint metallic sheen. The same shimmering effect that had covered the figure in the vault was now creeping over her own skin, spreading like a virus. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling. "No, this can't be happening." A sudden voice, cold and disembodied, echoed through her mind. "It has begun, Alicia. The price of your curiosity is paid." Her heart skipped a beat. It was the entity again, speaking to her directly, even though she couldn't see it. She clutched her head, trying to block out the alien voice, but it wouldn't stop. "The truth was never meant for you. You have touched what should remain buried. And now, the transformation begins." A heavy weight pressed on her chest, like a force was pulling her deeper into the ground. She gasped for air, her eyes wide with terror. The pulse in her veins grew louder, more insistent. It felt as though her very essence was being rewritten, her human body unable to contain the power now coursing through her. Then, from the corner of her vision, she saw a movement. Zane stirred, groaning as he came to, rubbing his head. He blinked a few times, his eyes unfocused. The others were beginning to wake up too, but none of them seemed to be aware of what was happening to Alicia. "Zane," she managed to cry out, her voice barely a whisper. "Get back. Don't touch it." But Zane, still groggy and confused, was already rising to his feet. He moved toward the pedestal, drawn to the orb, his hand stretched out, his fingers trembling. Alicia's heart lurched. "No. Zane, stop," she screamed, but it was too late. The moment his hand made contact with the artifact, a violent pulse of energy shot through the vault, throwing Alicia back against the ground. She gasped, her body racked with pain as the world spun out of control. The force of the pulse had sent a shockwave through the ship, rattling the walls and shaking the very foundation of the vault. Zane staggered back, his body twitching violently as the same metallic sheen began to creep over his skin, just as it had done to Alicia. This isn't right," Zane whispered, his voice thick with panic. "What the hell is happening to us?" Alicia could barely speak, her words caught in her throat. The transformation wasn't just happening to her. It was happening to them all. The truth they had sought had come at a terrible price, and now they were paying for it. "You have taken the first step," the entity's voice whispered once more, but this time it was almost kind. "Your bodies are but vessels. The truth you seek will burn through you, and when it is finished, only the pure will remain, only the worthy." Alicia gritted her teeth, trying to push herself to her feet. She needed to stop this. She needed to get to the artifact and destroy it, somehow. But her body was betraying her. Every movement felt like wading through a pool of liquid metal, the weight of the transformation slowing her down. She could feel her muscles shifting, the very cells of her body rearranging themselves, merging with something not quite human. "Stop," she whispered, her voice raw and hoarse. "We can still stop this, we can." The vault shook again, and this time the rumbling was different. It wasn't just the ship's structure that was trembling, it was the entire room, as though the very fabric of reality were coming undone. Then, the ceiling above them cracked open, revealing a hidden chamber. From within the shadows, a massive shape emerged. something far larger than the shimmering entity that had spoken to them before. This new form was more solid, more tangible, and yet still far beyond anything Alicia could comprehend. It was a creature of shadows and light, its shape shifting with every moment, as if it were made of pure energy. The crew recoiled, instinctively taking cover. The entity in front of them bowed, acknowledging the new arrival. "The final guardian," it whispered. "It is time for the chosen to face the ultimate truth." The creature's gaze swept over the room, focusing on Alicia and her crew. Its voice reverberated through the vault, a deep and terrifying sound. "You sought the truth. Now, you will face its consequence. Only one of you will emerge from this place alive." Alicia's heart pounded in her chest. The artifact, the orb, had brought them here. But now the truth was not just about knowledge. It was about survival. And to survive, they would have to fight not only the transformation that had taken root inside them, but also the terrible force that now loomed before them. Her hand moved instinctively toward her sidearm. The battle had only just begun. The air in the vault grew heavier, colder, as if the space itself was holding its breath. Alicia stood frozen, her body pulsing with strange new energies that seemed to tear at her very being. The shimmering metallic sheen spread over her skin, creeping further with every heartbeat. The transformation was nearly complete. She could feel her thoughts twisting, shifting in response to something deep within her, something she couldn't control. Zane, now standing beside her, stared in wide-eyed horror at the massive creature that had emerged from the shadows. His hands trembled, but he managed to raise his weapon, his voice shaky as he spoke. "What is that thing?" Alicia's breath caught in her throat as she tried to focus. The creature before them was enormous, its form writhing in and out of shape as if it couldn't decide whether it was made of light, shadow, or something more ancient. Its presence filled the chamber, pressing against their chests, suffocating them with its power. The voice that echoed through the vault was not the voice of the figure that had spoken to them earlier. It was something older, more ancient and terrifying. "You sought the truth, but truth comes at a cost." Alicia's heart pounded faster. The transformation, the orb, it was all connected. The entity and this creature. It was as though the two were the same, two aspects of an unfathomable force that had controlled everything from the very beginning. "Why?" Alicia gasped, her voice barely audible over the low hum of energy that reverberated through the vault. "Why did you bring us here? Why did you let us awaken it?" "The truth has always been within your grasp," the creature responded, its form flickering in the dim light. "You were never meant to find it. You were never meant to survive it. But you are here now, and the time has come for the final test." The temperature in the vault plummeted, and Alicia's breath came in sharp, visible gasps. Her skin, still rippling with metallic energy, felt as though it were burning, stretching, reshaping. She was no longer fully human. She could feel herself changing, her mind expanding in ways that terrified her. The knowledge that had once seemed so distant was now flooding her consciousness. The past, the future, the unspoken truths of the universe, they all rushed in at once. But it was too much. She couldn't grasp it all. Her body couldn't contain it. And then she understood what the creature meant. It wasn't just about the truth. It was about who would survive the knowledge, who would be worthy enough to bear its weight. "How do we stop it?" Zane's voice cracked as he stepped forward, his weapon still raised. "How do we stop this transformation?" The creature's gaze focused on him, and for a moment it seemed almost amused. "You cannot stop what has begun," it said, its voice like a thunderclap. "You have already chosen your fates. You are no longer the same." Suddenly, Alicia felt the ground beneath her feet tremble. The vault was shaking, as though it were coming alive. The walls cracked, and strange symbols began to glow, their intricate patterns pulsing like veins of energy running through the structure. A low, guttural hum filled the space, vibrating through her body. A soft whisper echoed in Alicia's mind, the same voice that had spoken to her earlier, now colder and more insistent. "The truth is yours to claim, but it is not free. You will fight for it. You will face the trial. Alicia looked down at her hands. They were no longer her hands. They had become something else, something inhuman. The very essence of her being had shifted, melding with the ancient power that had once belonged to the creators of the vault. The creature raised his arms, and the chamber erupted with an explosive force, shattering the walls and sending debris flying in all directions. Alicia and the crew were thrown backward, struggling to regain their footing. A bright, blinding light flared in the center of the vault, and from it a massive figure appeared, one that dwarfed the creature in size. It was a being of pure light, its form constantly shifting, as though it were an embodiment of energy itself. The light surged outward, engulfing the entire room. "The final guardian has arrived," the creature murmured, its voice trembling with what could almost be fear. "You must face it, Alicia. You must face it alone." Alicia's heart raced. She could feel the power of the light figure, could feel it trying to enter her, trying to consume her. The trial had begun, and it was one she had no choice but to face. She didn't have time to think. Her body moved on its own, fueled by a strange, overwhelming force. She felt a surge of energy coursing through her veins, a power that was not hers, but that she could command. The transformation had completed. She was no longer just human. The figure of light loomed closer, its energy crackling like a storm. She could feel it testing her, pushing her, trying to overwhelm her. But Alicia refused to back down. This wasn't just about survival. This was about the truth she had spent her entire life chasing. She reached out, her hand trembling, and with all the power now flowing through her, she struck at the light figure. The force of her blow sent a shockwave through the vault, but the figure didn't fall. It merely shimmered, its form twisting and reforming. "You cannot defeat me," it boomed, its voice filling the space. "I am the embodiment of truth. I am the answer to all your questions, the final revelation. But the cost is everything you are." Alicia gritted her teeth, summoning every ounce of strength she had left. The entity's words echoed in her mind, and for the first time, she understood. The trial wasn't just about defeating the light, it was about embracing the truth, even if it meant losing everything else. She closed her eyes, focusing all her energy, all her thoughts, on the truth that she had come for. The truth that had been hidden for so long. "I choose the truth," she whispered. And with that final declaration, she unleashed all the power. The vault trembled, as if the very structure of reality was being unmade by Alicia's declaration. The energy in the chamber shifted, swirling violently in response to her words. The light figure, now writhing with intensity, flared and pulsed, trying to counter her newfound power. Yet there was no going back. Alicia could feel the truth rippling through her, flooding her mind. Her thoughts became a cacophony of memories of a time before time, of worlds that had never been, and civilizations that had risen and fallen before humanity had even dreamed of the stars. The flood of knowledge was overwhelming, but this time it felt different. She was no longer drowning in it. She was controlling it. Her transformation was complete. She wasn't just a human anymore. She was something more, something that had touched the very fabric of the universe itself. And now it was a part of her. The power thrummed beneath her skin, ready to explode at her command. But there was a price. The words of the entity echoed in her mind, dark and insistent. "The truth has a price. You have embraced it, but now the void is yours to face." Alicia could feel the air around her grow thick, heavy with a presence that seemed ancient, eternal. Her heart pounded as the void around her began to grow darker, its edges fraying, as though the very fabric of space itself was unspooling. "Zane, get back," she shouted, her voice barely audible against the hum of energy. Zane, still struggling against the strange transformation, took a hesitant step back, his face pale and contorted in fear. He had never seen her like this. No one had. But she wasn't just different anymore. She was beginning to understand. The truth she had sought for so long wasn't some simple artifact or hidden knowledge. It was a force, a presence, and it had chosen her to be its vessel. The light figure that had loomed over her seemed to hesitate, flickering, its form dimming slightly. For a brief moment, Alicia saw a flash of something almost human, beneath the shifting chaos of energy. Then it spoke, but this time, its voice was not booming or omnipotent. It was tinged with something else, something that sounded like fear. You have awakened what was meant to remain asleep. You cannot control it. You cannot fight it. The void will consume you. The light figure's form cracked, its energy unstable, as if it could no longer maintain its shape. Tendrils of raw power snaked from it, reaching for Alicia, trying to pull her back, to contain her. But Alicia stood her ground. She was no longer afraid. "I've never been afraid of the unknown," she whispered to herself, her voice filled with newfound certainty. "I've spent my entire life searching for it. Now, I will not be controlled by it." Her hands stretched out, the energy within her rising to meet the void. A great, tumultuous wave of power surged from her fingertips, and the light figure recoiled in pain. It writhed as if it were being torn apart, its energy unraveling. Alicia's senses were overloaded. The void was within her, but it wasn't consuming her. It was being contained, shaped, bent to her will. Her thoughts stretched beyond time and space, and she understood. The light figure screeched in agony, its voice now desperate. "You cannot control the void. You cannot contain the infinite." But Alicia didn't hear it anymore. She was beyond its reach. She was more than human now. She was the conduit of an ancient power, a bridge between the forgotten past and the infinite future. The vault had become her battleground, and the void was no longer her enemy. It was her ally. The transformation had gone far beyond the physical now. Her mind was melding with the truth she had uncovered, and the pieces of the universe, long lost, began to fall into place. The entity was still there, watching her, but it was fading, retreating into the dark corners of the vault. The walls trembled again, but this time it was different. The oppressive weight of the vault began to lift. The energy that had once pressed in on her now felt like a tether, an anchor connecting her to something far larger than the creature, than the artifact. The vault had been built to contain this truth, to keep it hidden. But now the truth was free. Suddenly, the ground shook violently, and the creature of light collapsed into a pool of shimmering dust. It disintegrated, its form splintering like broken glass, and then it was gone. The vault fell silent. Alicia, standing at the center of the chamber, was still. Her breathing was steady now, her mind clearing, the tumult of her transformation subsiding. She was exhausted, drained, but triumphant. Her eyes swept around the room, landing on the remnants of the shattered walls. Her crew, still alive, had been spared the worst of the cataclysm. Zane, though shaken, was standing, staring at her with wide eyes. What did you do?" he whispered, his voice filled with awe and fear. "Alicia, what are you?" Her hand trembled as she wiped her forehead, feeling the last traces of the transformation ebb away, leaving her human again. She took a deep breath and turned to him. "I don't know," she admitted quietly, "but I think I've just opened a door to a new chapter for humanity." But the truth had come at a price. The void had been a test, not just for her, but for all of them. And while she had conquered it, she knew that the consequences were far from over. They had come here seeking answers. But now they were walking into a future of unknown possibilities. The vault wasn't just a place of secrets anymore. It was the gateway to something larger than all of them. And whatever lay beyond, humanity would have to face it, with or without her. The lights in the vault flickered, and Alicia felt the faintest stir of something, a presence, whispering through the chamber. "This is not the end. This is only the beginning." And with that, the journey into the unknown had truly begun. Alicia stood at the heart of the shattered vault, her breath steady, but her mind racing. The stillness in the air was suffocating, a sharp contrast to the chaotic energy that had raged through the chamber moments before. Her skin, still tingling from the transformation, felt foreign, yet grounded. She had crossed a threshold, one she couldn't quite comprehend. Zane moved slowly toward her, his eyes wary but filled with a desperate curiosity. The other members of the crew had fallen into a stunned silence, unsure of what to say or do. They had witnessed something that could not be explained, something beyond their understanding. Alicia. Zane's voice was strained, his hands trembling. What are you now? Alicia didn't have an answer. She was no longer sure of who she was. The truth, that infinite, overwhelming knowledge, had changed her in ways she couldn't yet articulate. It felt as though a part of her soul had been stretched to its breaking point. The door she had opened was far wider than she had ever imagined. The vault no longer felt like a place of confinement. It felt like a tomb, a monument to something that had existed long before humanity, and perhaps long after. The light from the destroyed entity had faded, but the air remained thick with the remnants of its power. Then a faint hum, almost imperceptible, sounded in the distance. Alicia's pulse quickened. She turned her head, trying to pinpoint the source, but the chamber remained eerily still. It's not over, the voice whispered in her mind again, that cold, disembodied tone that had first warned her of the price of truth. It wasn't the entity. No, this voice was different, ancient, infinite, and somehow disappointed. Who are you? Alicia asked aloud, her voice echoing through the empty chamber. What do you want? For a long moment, there was no response. But then, the hum grew louder, filling the vault, vibrating through her bones. A glowing symbol began to appear on the far wall, ancient and intricate, its design unfurling like a map. You have claimed the truth, Alicia. But the truth was never meant to be possessed. It is a force beyond your understanding. You are its chosen conduit. But the cost is yours alone to bear. The voice paused, and Alicia could feel its weight press against her chest, like an invisible force trying to suffocate her. You will face the consequences, it whispered, cold and final. Humanity was never meant to hold this knowledge. You will carry the burden. Forever. Zane stepped forward, his face creased with confusion and fear. Alicia, what's happening? What did you just do? You said we'd be free from this place. But it's still here. The truth. The power. It's all still here. The weight of Zane's words cut through her. She had thought, foolishly, that confronting the void, embracing the truth, would bring clarity. But now she understood. The truth wasn't something to be conquered. It was something that conquered you. It gnawed at the very core of what made you human, taking pieces of you until you no longer recognized what was left. And she had let it in. She had let it change her. The symbol on the wall flared, and Alicia's body jerked involuntarily, as though responding to some unseen command. The crew flinched, and Zane reached out, his hand hovering near her arm. Alicia, stop, he shouted, but it was too late. The transformation wasn't over. It was just beginning. Her skin began to shift again, the metallic sheen returning. But this time it was different. It wasn't just her appearance that was changing. Her mind felt like it was stretching into infinity, the flood of alien knowledge pouring into her like a broken dam. She could see the past and future simultaneously. She could feel the weight of civilizations long gone, their hopes and regrets. She could hear the whispered thoughts of every being in the universe, echoing through her, becoming a part of her. The crew backed away, their faces pale and wide-eyed, as if they could see what was happening to her. But the worst part wasn't the transformation itself. It was the feeling that she was losing herself, that the truth was consuming her in ways she could never have anticipated. Then, the voice spoke again, its tone colder this time. You cannot control the truth, Alicia. You can only bear witness to it. Humanity will never be the same. You will carry this knowledge, this power, and it will bleed into your kind. You are no longer a person, but a harbinger of a new age. Alicia's breath hitched, and her mind, on the brink of collapse, fought to focus. The realization hit her like a thunderclap. This was what the entity had meant. The price had been her humanity. The truth was not just an answer, it was a transformation. And she would never be the same again. But the worst part was the certainty that she wasn't alone in this. The symbol on the wall flickered, and the hum began to resonate with a new intensity. Something in the distance stirred, a presence that was far larger than her, far older. Her thoughts blurred for a second, and she could feel the others, the other chosen, those who had sought the truth before her. Her mind touched theirs. The crew gasped in horror as a low, growling voice broke through the silence of the vault. "You are not alone in this, Alicia. You are not the first. There are others, many others, who have borne this weight, who have become part of the truth. And now the cycle begins again." Alicia staggered back, her head spinning, as the walls of the vault began to pulse with an eerie, otherworldly light. She wasn't sure if she was hearing it or if it was just her mind, but the whispers were unmistakable. They were there, the others. The price of truth had already been paid. And now, the veil between worlds, the veil between them, was beginning to tear. The vault was alive again, pulsing with an energy that was ancient and infinite, as though the structure itself had been awakened from a long, deep slumber. Alicia's body still hummed with the power of the truth, an energy that seemed to stretch beyond her, tugging at her very soul. She felt it, a presence, swirling in the chamber, filling her mind with countless whispers, endless voices that didn't belong to her. They were from elsewhere, from other beings, other times, other places. Her hands trembled, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she was afraid. She could feel herself slipping, her identity breaking apart. The knowledge, the power, it was too much. The weight of the cosmos was pushing down on her, threatening to consume everything she had once been. "Zane." Alicia's voice was frantic, sharp. She reached for him, her fingers stretching, but he stepped back, his face pale as he looked at her, at what she had become. "Alicia, I don't know who you are anymore," Zane's voice cracked. He didn't understand. He couldn't. How could he? What she had become was beyond human comprehension. She had stepped into something vast, something so far-reaching that even she couldn't truly grasp it. The void had become a part of her, and now it wanted more. The whispers intensified in her mind, swirling in a maddening cadence. "You are not the first. You will not be the last. You are not alone." Their words were as cold as the stars, a reminder that this path she had chosen was not one of salvation, but of eternal transformation. Suddenly, the floor beneath her feet began to crack, and a low, deep rumble filled the air. The vault was coming apart, but it wasn't destruction. It was the unlocking of something far greater, far more terrible. A flood of light, cold and pure, poured from the center of the chamber, filling the air with an otherworldly glow. And in that light, Alicia saw them. Figures, tall, shadowy, and humanoid, emerged from the depths of the vault, their forms flickering with the same energy that now surged through her. They were like her. They were her predecessors, their bodies altered, transformed by the truth just as she had been. And as they gathered in the light, their eyes turned to her, filled with an infinite sorrow. "The cycle begins again," one of them spoke, its voice a chorus of countless tones. "You have taken the truth, and now you must carry it into the universe, just as we did before you." Alicia's heart pounded. "What are you? What's happening? Why did you bring me here?" "You are not the first to seek the truth, Alicia," the figure continued. "We, too, sought it, and we became what you now are. We were once human, like you, and now we are vessels. Vessels of the truth. We carry the knowledge, the power, and the burden of all that came before. And now it is your turn." A cold dread washed over her as she pieced together the meaning of their words. The cycle, the truth. It was a curse, not a gift. Those who sought the truth were not meant to be free. They were meant to be transformed, to carry the knowledge of the universe until they could no longer remember what they had been. But why? Why must it be this way? Alicia cried, the tears welling up in her eyes. Why can't humanity, my people, have the truth without this price? One of the figures stepped forward, its face shrouded in light. Because the truth is not meant to be held by mortals. The burden is too great. It is a power that will tear apart all that is human. And so those who claim it are forever changed, their minds shattered, their spirits stretched beyond the limits of their form. Alicia took a step back, her knees weak. Then, why did you let me take it? The figure's gaze softened, and for a moment, Alicia saw a flicker of something. Regret, perhaps. Because you were meant to. Just as we were. You have been chosen to carry the knowledge of the universe. You are the herald of the new age. An age where humanity must evolve beyond its limitations. And to do so, they must learn the truth at any cost. Zane moved toward her, his eyes filled with desperation. Alicia, don't listen to them. This isn't you. This isn't what you wanted. You were searching for answers, for meaning, but this is too much. Alicia looked at him, her heart aching. I never wanted this, she whispered. But deep inside, she knew. She had wanted it. She had always wanted to understand. She had always wanted to know. The truth was too powerful, and now she was bound to it. The vault shook violently as the ancient beings began to disperse, their forms dissolving into the air like smoke. But their words remained with her, echoing in her mind. The cycle continues. Humanity will never be the same. The last of them vanished, and the vault returned to its eerie stillness. But the truth, what had been unlocked, was no longer contained. The knowledge, the power, the burden, it had been released. And it would ripple through the universe, reshaping everything. Alicia looked around at her crew. They were still there, broken and frightened, but alive. But she knew the truth now. There was no going back. She had crossed a line, and so had humanity. The age of ignorance was over. The universe, in all its infinite complexity, was now open to them. But the cost had been steep. Zane approached her, his voice a trembling whisper. What now? Alicia didn't have an answer. But she knew one thing for certain. The truth could never be contained again. It was out, and humanity would never be the same. The cycle would continue, and each generation would face the same choice. To seek the truth, to embrace it, or to be consumed by it. The journey was only beginning.